Eaters of the Living by Tacticoolweeb. When people go missing, strange sounds occur. All the dogs in town die or show up in meaty chunks, and odd tracks start showing up. It can only mean several things. Chief amongst them, monsters. So they call in a handful of folks to look into it, see if it's real or if some son of a bitch is pulling a prank. I'm one of those people you call. Well, the government calls me. We have an agreement, being the government, I take care of the monster problems, and in return I don't become a monster myself. I've outlived many empires and kingdoms, though I've outlived many empires and kingdoms who thought they were eternal. I fought the Redcoats, Japs, Pathlao, and the Dirt Worshippers. I think I've earned a bit of arrogance. I'm not saying I'm the best there is at what I do. Hell, personally, I think my wife's scarier. Anyway, my name is Gunnery Sergeant Joe Allen, former Gunnery Sergeant. I recently retired. Again, I do it every so often. I work with the Marine Corps 3rd Recon Battalion and the Marine Corps' Paranormal Investigation Strike Squadron. Yes, I work for PISS. Because the military loves their fucking anagrams. Now, I work for an OGA dealing with the problems on the homeland, which is what brought me to Alaska. Actually, that isn't true. I was working on paper for college and writing about frontier living and 1800 survival and camping gear. They didn't call it that back then, but that's what you would call it now. But that's what you would know it as now. I was curious to run some things I didn't run back in the day. Drawing from my own knowledge is one thing, but actually doing the research, that's totally different. I was playing with the 4440 cartridge. This ain't your daddy's 44 Magnum. More like your weird uncle's cowboy competition shooting rounds. For a long gun, I was running 18-inch 1873 Winchester. For handgun, I had a Colt single-action Army, the Peacemaker. This one was the 7.5-inch barrel, often called the Wyatt Earp Special. It had better accuracy than the standard model. Both firearms use the same bullet. They often say 30-30 killed more deer than any other cartridge. Well, they used to say that about 4440. I can confirm it did good on my till. But a moose or an elk, I went back to my 45-70. Anyway, enough about my studies. I'm sitting in my camp, my horse, Moose, grazing close by, writing down some stuff about using local flora for spices, and doing my best to replicate hibachi-style steak and rice with what I had on me. And yes, they had rice back in those days. Even if it wasn't popular, what can I say? I married a Japanese woman, and I was missing home. But my sat phone rang. About 50 miles from where I was, which for Alaska is pretty damn close, is a small town under assault. Folks have been coming up missing, all the dogs are gone. Read my opening statement to get the full effect. They asked me to check it out. Who knows if Canadians were gonna try to invade again. Wait, forget I said that. That ain't been declassified yet. I bundled up my green surplus wool, pullover sweater, and my sheepskin flannel jacket, and Smokey Bear hat. Back in the day they called it the Mountain Tana Peak. But anyways, pack up and made my way east. It started to lightly rain as we left. It took me more than 2 days of hard ride. Through brush and thorny bushes, I tucked my pants into my boots. Ever see that? The reason folks used to do that, or didn't do that, was to protect their pants from getting all torn up. I was pushing Moose hard. Well, not too hard. He's about as hard to kill as I am. He ain't a normal horse, but it's still rude to do some things to him. We subsided off water in my canteen, streams, and berries, and venison jerky as we went. I wasn't even making coffee, just using an old ranger trick I picked up from one of the Ragnars and dipped coffee beans or grounds. I was only a couple miles from the village. A few days later, a shiver ran through my spine. It hadn't rained in the last day and a half, and luckily, it ain't snowed recently, but I was still soiled and cold. It was January in southern Alaska. A fucking miracle we hadn't gone through more snow. My yellow leather cattleman gloves were almost frozen to the reins as I pried them away to pull out my compass and mini tablet. No, it wasn't historically accurate, but I never said I was going 100%. Pointed moose about 21 degrees to our left. I went down into this bushy knoll. Winding through tall trees, my ears perked. Something was out there. More like there was a lack of background sounds. Something scaring the local wildlife. It had been a full day since we'd seen anything other than some fish and rivers. The animals seemed to have cleared out. No birds, squirrels, or chipmunks. I pulled the leather safety catch off the hammer of my pistol. I had in a cross draw. Something I did years ago. So you watch all these Hollywood movies and figure cross draw was for show-offs or for people who were fast. No. Here's a science experiment you can do. Have your phone in your pocket and sit in your vehicle. Try to pull it out. Gotta angle your body, don't you? Push your leg out. Apply that to drawing a gun. Pulling it up into your ribs to try and clear the leather. Nope. Cross draw, cunts. Moose laid his ears back. He was sensing something. Shaking his head, I rubbed a gloved hand down his neck trying to calm him down. I feel it too, boy. I grumbled. The treetops were thick. It was kind of dark in the forest and clouds moved in ahead. The wind splashed me with water. It must be misty. But as the clouds moved in, it only darkened. Dark enough, I almost missed the trail. Pulling back on the reins, I took the seat. Pulling back on the reins, I looked to see broken branches, kicked up dirt. Even from up high on the horse, I could see there was a trail. Looking around, I see there was more than one, like an old winding path that's naturally worn in. And this was beaten brush for a shortcut. I swing one leg around off Moose, pulling the reins over his head to pull him behind me, squatting down. Boot marks. Looks like women's boots, but deep in the soft leaf-packed mud. This was firm, frozen ground. This might be a well-sized woman, or she was carrying something. This far north, it's hard to tell men's tracks from women's tracks by depth alone. I'm going more on size and shape. The space between the steps and pock marks. One of the thorny bushes had a gleam to it. Blood. Whoever this is, they didn't even stop or slow down when they got hurt. They were being chased. I followed the trail a bit. The mostly flat ground started thinning out and away from the thorny bushes. The Devil's Club. It sloped down now. Gradual 8-foot drop. Some rocks and crags here and there. I went slow so Moose didn't slip on his way down. But some of the moss had impact marks on it. The rocks were stuck in some places. Touching it, my glove came away powdery. Was someone throwing something at this person? But then, where were their projectiles? I tossed the reins over the saddle and told Moose to follow behind a bit. I was going to need to come on my own. We were heading to a hidden boulder field under the tall trees. Patches of ferns gave plenty of places for people or things to hide. A large splash of blood revealed whoever I was tracking had been hurt. And right next to it was a wet stick. No, spear? Dart? I picked it up carefully, stone head. short but narrow, almost shaped like an oak leaf, was sitting. As I looked at it, I noticed it hadn't been broken off. It had fallen off. I'd seen this before. I had used it. This wasn't at tall dart. I wasn't an expert on Alaskan natives. But was obsidian even naturally occurring around here? I guess we're close enough to the Ring of Fire. It is not in the realm of possibility. But I heard a noise that shot me out of my study. Dropping the dart, I pulled my revolver, thumbing the loading gate open. I thumbed in the 6th round. I had been carrying with one empty chamber for safety reasons, keeping it on a partial cock. I slowly crept forward, lifted my cowboy boots so I could still move quietly. Good news about the double layer of socks, one being wool, and there wasn't much movement in my boots. Slip ones have that problem. If I was going to run, most of the time I prefer laces, but as tight as my boots are, if I had to break camp, I was confident out there. I could find a monster, or I could find a wolf den or a bear. And as I like the 44-40 round, I don't want to have to fight a bear with it, but my ears heard something else. This was people, person, heavy breathing, fear. I stepped forward and moved some ferns out of the way. Sure enough, a slit in the stump between some rocks and foliage. Looks like an old wolf den. And right there was a woman. Late 20s, early 30s maybe. A stick with feathers sticking out of her back. My shoulders slumped as I realized I'm too fucking late. She must have been out berry picking or something. She had an empty holster and a knife in her hand. Blaze orange vest with a dead squirrel in it. She was out hunting and got attacked. Bend down and check on her. No pulse. I go for ID. Get to the local cops. See if she has a vent. My thoughts were cut off as I happened to turn my head under a boulder as a little girl. No more than 7. Eyes wide, a scrape across her forehead, covered in dirt and blood, and looked like she saw the devil.
Monster.
Her voice was quiet and hoarse. I cocked my eyebrow. What?
Monsters. They're still here.
About then, a roaring shout could be heard right behind me. A large, burly figure burst out of the ferns, club raised high, frothing at the mouth and yelling with a wide eye, like a Miami bath salts cannibal. He took a swing at me, but I went left, dodging out of the way, almost falling on the poor dead woman. The beast of a man thing grabbed me. I heard Moose shout. I headbutted the fucker hard. He was wearing animal skins. I tried to shake him off me when I saw another stand up in the ferns in front of me. I didn't have time for this. I slammed my head back, hitting him in the nose. He grabbed at it and staggered back. I turned to shoot at my hip, but Moose beat me to it, rearing back and kicking the bastard into the boulder, breaking his ribs. I could tell by the wheezing gasp he made. I quickly turned to the next man, who was running at me with a stone axe. Holding the trigger down, I fanned the hammer, snapshot at him in the ribs. He bowled over, clenching his chest and spewing blood from his mouth. Another yell. This one a ways away. I thumb-cocked the single-action hammer and spun, lined up my sights and shot a third through his open mouth. I turned to the kid, extending my hand. Sorry about your ma loss. Come on. We gotta get out of here. She looked back at what I'm assuming was her mother, and with frozen, tear-stained cheeks, she reached out and took my hand. I pulled her under my arm, shoved one foot in Moose's stirrup, and hoisted myself up. I knew where to go for the village, and I needed to get there now. I kept the kid in front of me as I grabbed the reins. Hold on, I shouted. Their little hands gripped the horn of the saddle for dear life. One with a wolf's pelt spear charged me from my right, so I shot him easily enough. With the kid here, though, couldn't really fight off with how many of them there were. And from the shouts and the movement in the trees, I could see there was a lot of a spurred moose, and he took off at full speed through the ferns and trees. A tall dart slammed into the tree next to me and shattered. I needed to focus on fleeing and not fighting, so I worked my revolver between me and the kid to fit it in my holster, making sure I kept a good grip on her and Moose at the same time. I squeezed my thighs together to stay on the saddle. One was in front of us, so he got a square-toed boot to the teeth. We ran and ran, dodging darts and rocks and other projectiles. I was up to my bullets and savages of some flavor. I think I found what I was after. Moose did most of the driving. Like I said, he ain't no normal horse. He knew he was sucking diesel and was better on his own than with me driving. He was sucking diesel and was better on his own than with me driving. Good news was I could see the end of the forest and the plains before the dam. Bad news was where we were. The end of the forest was the end of the ground, with a pretty steep cliff going down. Not a 90-degree angle, and not so much Moose couldn't clear it, but enough where I held on tighter to both Moose and the kid and yelled, "Holy fuck!" As he went ass up and face down. Sure-footed as he was, the ground started to slide and fall next to us. Darts going wild, I could feel and hear the kid crying in my arms. I've seen enough children die in war, and I promised myself I wouldn't let it happen anymore. This wasn't war. I still wasn't going to let this kid get hurt. The dart grazed my leg, cutting more denim than skin. Thank goodness for the layers and long johns I'm wearing right now. Moose could really open up. We went a full mile just short of the village when I pulled back on these reins. "Whoa!" I called Moose, who shook his head like saying, "The fuck are you doing?" But still, that was the trust we had in each other. I picked the kid up and leaned down, set her on the ground. "Go home, kid. Y'all got a sheriff?" She looked at me, wide-eyed, as I wheeled Moose around in a circle and looked back at her. She couldn't find her voice at first, but nodded her head, and she took off like only a child full of energy could. I briefly remember my own daughter. I doubt I would see her after this fight, but Lord willing, one day I'll have a reason to not fight so hard. Right now, my reason was trying to make me escape. I doubted the Screamers cared about the town. I did an old cavalry trick and pulled on Moose's reins and slid out of the saddle, bringing him down onto his side. We trained for this. As I did that, I pulled my lever action out, thumbing the hammer back. Now don't confuse this as me trying to use Moose as cover. I mean, I was, but neither of us die easy. I needed to be a smaller target, and to use him like a rest. This would keep him still and give me an Alamo to fight from. And sure enough, these spanners busted out of the bush and kept running. Some got full starts and launched darts, coming in yards short of where I was. Resting an elbow on Moose's ribs, I lined up the sights, slipped them to the max, and counted down, squeezing the trigger, catching the first tool high in the chest, rocking him back as his feet went skyward. I worked the lever as I was reminded all this time I've had to do it before. The Chosen, the Banana Wars, but I was a Marine. Accuracy is at our very core, and I wasn't one for wasting ammo. I let them get a bit closer as I started picking them off. I dropped 5, and the next wave would be out of my range, so I used that time to thumb some more rounds into the tube. Here's the thing about fighting with a lever action. You gotta feed it when you can. Moose tried to stand back up, but I shot a hand out to his neck and pushed him down again. A dart going over his head as I shot the culprit, kneeling on his neck slightly. Okay, don't give me that look. It was by his shoulder, and horses have fucking necks. I wasn't hurt. I must have dropped about 2 dust before a truck drove up behind me. Cops hopped out with their service rifles. Ooh, if that didn't make me want to sing my little Armalite. They put well-placed and superior 5.56 fire at him. Figuring out that they were getting shot to pieces, the Screamers finally turned and ran. A tall tan cop, native by the look, came around the truck and looked at me, looking at my hat and questioned. State trooper? Almost like he couldn't believe it. No, I heard y'all had a pest problem. Tall man who looked in charge blinked. The lady with the FBI said she would send a specialist. I'm guessing that's you. I nodded. Yeah. What the hell is going on? I nodded. Yeah. What the hell is going on? My accent was slipping from borderline southern to more Celtic. That happens when I'm in a high-stress situation. We were hoping you could tell us. We haven't even seen those things until just now. I hung the work on the lever and ejected the spent casing. Cover me and I'll figure that out. As I said, let me stand up. I patted him and I pulled his sugar cube for him to enjoy. Stay here, bud. The cops all filed in and pulled security as I walked over to the closest body. I finally got a good look at him. His skin was dark, but not in the natural way. Leathery. Like wind and cold and sun had aged him. Lesions like skin cancer were obvious. Some of his features were wrong. He had a bearskin hood on. I used my barrel to push the back and saw the large, jagged teeth. At first, you could be forgiven to think this guy was just inbred, and he probably was, but he was something far worse, evident by the large ridge on his forehead. Neanderthals. I had found a rogue, lost tribe of Neanderthals. They exist, uncommon as they are. Every time someone takes care of one, they pray it's the last. Fish and Wildlife counts them as an invasive species. Believe it or not, I was going to meet backup. After getting tailed into the sheriff's office, which was basically 3 of those old school portables taped together, Moose was drinking out back. I was able to get into a change of clothes and get more info out of the cops. Like how the little girl was okay. Her name was Misa. Good name. That was indeed her mother. Her father died of a heart attack a while back. I asked if she had any place to go. The sheriff revealed he was the mother's brother, and that he would take her in. This all started about 3 months ago. Slow at first, but it's progressively been getting worse and worse. He called the FBI, who called my agency, who called me. I pulled out my radio phone. There was one man I knew I could call on for a time like this. He was family. Sort of. I am honor bound to claim his wife as my niece. Hello?
How's it cutting, nephew?
Gunny? Hey man, what's going on? The problem. That's what. I'm up in Alaska, and we got a caveman problem. What kind of problem? He asked, almost stupefied. He was just like his dad. How about a bit of portal magic? Bring a long gun and some ammo, would you? I'd call your other girl, but she's busy.
Where is she?
A bit of steel to his voice. Gotta respect the protective streak. Shot show, lad. It's this week. She's probably going to come around sick if she heads home. She might stay in Texas a bit. More with the 737. I'll be there shortly. Send me the coordinates. He says I hung up the phone. The Sheriff Gus handed me a cup of coffee. Who was that? Oh, that's someone like me. But a bit different. His name's Anderson. He's a paranormal detective.